It wasn't supposed to be anything more than a casual night at my friend's place. He had invited me over, saying we'd just hang out, maybe watch a game, grab some pizza. When I arrived, the house had that lived-in warmth, framed photos on the wall, the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee still lingering in the air. I noticed the aunt right away, sitting in the living room with a quiet grace that seemed to command the space without even trying. She was different from the women I was used to being around. Older, yes, but in a way that only made her presence more striking. Her long black hair framed her face, and I caught the faintest glimmer of subtle freckles under the soft lamplight. Her smile wasn't forced. It was calm, genuine, the kind that made you feel instantly at ease. At 40, she carried herself with a mixture of elegance and effortlessness. Confident, yet with a trace of vulnerability in her eyes if you looked closely enough. My friend excused himself almost immediately, stepping out to pick up the food. "I'll be back in a bit," he said casually, as though it was no big deal leaving me there. Suddenly, I was alone on the couch with her. She shifted slightly, turning toward me, and for a moment, the air felt heavier. The TV was on, but muted, its flickering light barely touching the room. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the ticking of a wall clock. Everything else seemed to fade into the background, leaving only the awareness of her presence beside me. "Long day?" she asked, her voice low, smooth, carrying the warmth of someone who had lived enough to mean what she said. "Yeah," I admitted, leaning back against the couch. "But this feels nice. Quiet." She gave a soft laugh, the kind that tugged at the corners of her lips and left a shadow of amusement in her dark brown eyes. "Quiet is underrated," she said, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was small, but I found myself watching it closely, the way her hand moved with ease, the soft curve of her wrist. I told myself it was just conversation, just being polite, but there was something else lingering beneath it. A curiosity, a pull. When she crossed one leg over the other, the faint brush of her knee against my side felt strangely noticeable. Not intentional, or maybe it was. I couldn't tell. Either way, I didn't move. The minutes stretched in that soft, hushed space, each second making me more aware of the details I wouldn't usually notice. The faint perfume that clung to her, the warmth of her body radiating through the small distance between us, the delicate smile lines at the corners of her eyes that told me she had lived, loved, and lost in ways I could only imagine. It was supposed to be a normal evening, but as I sat there, unexpectedly alone with her, I felt a shift. Something unspoken had already begun to tea first. It was just polite conversation, the kind of filler talk you'd expect when two people are left alone in a room together. She asked me about work, about how I liked the neighborhood, questions that seemed casual, easy to brush off. But there was something in the way she asked, something in how she held my gaze and waited for the answer, that made me feel as though my words actually mattered. I leaned back against the couch, trying to seem relaxed, though I was more aware of myself than usual. "I'm still figuring things out," I admitted honestly. "Trying to sort out what I want to do long-term, you know? Sometimes it feels like I'm just drifting." Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "That doesn't sound like drifting. That sounds like being young. You've got time to find your way." The way she said it wasn't dismissive. It was reassuring, like she had stood where I stood once, and understood the uncertainty without judgment. I asked her about her own life, expecting her to wave it off, but instead she leaned back too, her shoulders loosening, as though she didn't often get the chance to share. "I thought I had it all figured out when I was your age," she said with a faint laugh. "But life, well, it has a way of teaching you otherwise." Her eyes flickered briefly, a softness behind them that hinted at past disappointments. She didn't spell them out, but I caught glimpses of relationships that didn't last, of dreams she had to let go of the kind of resilience that only comes with years. I found myself leaning in, drawn by the sincerity in her tone. "And now," I asked quietly, "do you feel like you figured it out?" Her gaze shifted toward the muted television for a moment, as though the answer wasn't simple. Then she looked back at me, her dark eyes steady calm. Now I've learned to stop chasing perfection. I take things as they come. The words lingered in the air, not heavy, but meaningful. She gave a small shrug and smiled, as though softening the weight of what she'd just admitted. But I felt it. I felt the quiet strength it must have taken to say that. We laughed at lighter things too, at how bad my friend was at keeping his house organized, at how the dog, who was curled up on the rug, seemed to run the place more than he did. Each laugh loosened the space between us, pulling us into a rhythm that felt natural, comfortable, as though we had been talking for much longer than just a handful of minutes. Somewhere in that exchange, the air between us shifted. It wasn't just small talk anymore. It was something heavier, something layered with an intimacy that surprised me. Every smile, every pause, every glance felt charged with meaning. By the time her laughter faded and silence settled for a moment, I realized I was no longer speaking to her like my friend's aunt. I was speaking to her like someone I wanted to know deeply, someone whose voice I wanted to hear for as long as she was willing to share it. The living room felt different now, though nothing had actually changed. The muted TV still flickered quietly in the corner. The same clock ticked steadily on the wall, but the space between us felt noticeably smaller. I couldn't tell if it was intentional or accidental, but somehow we had drawn closer on the couch. At first, it was little things. She leaned toward the coffee table to reach for the remote, her shoulder brushing lightly against mine. A quick, passing touch, something so ordinary, yet my chest tightened at the contact. Normally, I would have shifted away, given space out of politeness, but this time I didn't move. She didn't either. She flipped through the channels absent-mindedly, though neither of us was really watching. Her leg crossed over the other, her knee tilting closer toward me. I felt the faint warmth radiating from her and the subtle pressure when the edge of her knee just grazed my thigh. She didn't pull back. I tried to keep my breathing steady, telling myself it was nothing, just the way we happened to be sitting. But my mind wouldn't let it go. Every brush, every near touch, carried an undercurrent that words couldn't reach. "You're quiet," she said softly, tilting her head toward me. I smiled faintly, running a hand through my hair. "Just thinking." "About what?" I hesitated. It felt dangerous to be too honest. About how some conversations feel different, like they stay with you. Her eyes lingered on me for a moment longer than they needed to. Then she looked back at the screen, but her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Yes," she murmured. "I know exactly what you mean." Another pause. The kind of silence that wasn't empty but filled with something invisible, something alive. She shifted again, this time leaning back into the couch with a tired sigh. Her arm brushed mine as it rested along the cushion, and the closeness became undeniable. I felt surrounded by her presence. The faint perfume that clung to her, the warmth of her skin, the subtle rhythm of her breath as it slowed into something steady, unguarded. I wanted to say something light to ease the tension, but the words never came. My tongue felt clumsy, my thoughts caught in the moment. Instead, I let myself notice her, really notice her. The way her long black hair slipped over her shoulder, the delicate laugh lines at the corners of her eyes, the grace in her posture even in this simple act of sitting. She was beautiful, not in a loud, obvious way, but in a way that seemed to deepen the longer I looked. Where her hand shifted to adjust the throw pillow at her side, the back of her fingers brushed my arm. It was nothing, just another ordinary touch. Yet my body reacted as if it were something more, something deliberate. She didn't apologize. She didn't retreat. And neither did I. The couch felt smaller than it had when I first sat down. Or maybe it wasn't the couch at all. Maybe it was us. The evening had stretched longer than I realized. The muted glow of the TV still painted the room in soft flickers, but the weight of the day was starting to show in her posture. She shifted once, twice, as though searching for comfort in the cushions. Then, with a tired exhale that carried both ease and hesitation, she let her head tip gently against my shoulder. For a heartbeat, I froze. Every muscle in my body went tense, caught between the instinct to stay still and the sudden fear of what it meant. Her hair brushed lightly against my jawline, the faint scent of her shampoo mixing with the perfume that lingered close. It was delicate, feminine, and completely disarming. Her weight was barely there at first, just a feather-light touch, but it was enough to send a rush of warmth through me. I didn't dare move. I didn't even dare breathe too deeply. I thought maybe she would pull away quickly, apologize, laugh it off. But she didn't. Instead, she settled in. Her head rested more firmly against me, her shoulder grazing mine in a quiet claim of space. Her body relaxed into the contact, like she had given herself permission to lean, to let go. I felt the soft rhythm of her breath against my arm, the steady rise and fall that contrasted with the pounding of my own heartbeat. I glanced down, uncertain whether I should look at her or not. Her eyes were closed, lashes resting gently against her cheeks. There was no tension in her features, only peace, as if this closeness wasn't strange to her at all, as if it was exactly where she wanted to be. Inside, I was a storm. Every thought wrestled with another. She's my friend's aunt. This isn't supposed to happen. Yet the warmth of her against me, the trust in that simple act, made it impossible to think of anything else. My arm twitched with the impulse to wrap around her, to draw her closer. I didn't, but the temptation was there, stronger than I wanted to admit. Instead, I shifted just slightly, enough so that she could rest more comfortably. The movement made her lean deeper into me, her body fitting into mine with a natural ease that felt both terrifying and perfect. The room was silent, except for the faint sound of the clock and the television's low hum. Yet the silence was heavy, charged, filled with everything neither of us was saying. I told myself it was harmless. She was tired, nothing more. She needed a place to rest, and I happened to be there. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was intention in it. Maybe not spoken, maybe not even fully admitted, but intention all the same. Her head shifted slightly, her cheek pressing more firmly against my shoulder. A soft sigh escaped her lips, a sound so subtle yet so intimate that it tightened my chest. I stared ahead at the TV without seeing a thing, every nerve alive with the awareness of her leaning against me. It wasn't just a moment anymore. It was a crossing, a quiet, wordless step into something we both felt but hadn't named. The room was still, but not empty. The kind of silence that filled the air wasn't awkward, nor was it the absence of sound. It was alive, almost electric. The muted television played some forgettable program, the colors flickering across the screen, but I wasn't watching. Every ounce of my attention was on the woman resting against me. Her head was on my shoulder, her body lightly pressed against my side, and I felt her presence in every breath, every heartbeat. The faint warmth of her cheek bled through the fabric of my shirt, anchoring me in the moment. I didn't dare move. Even the smallest shift felt like it might break the fragile spell that had settled over us. Her breathing was soft, steady, unhurried. With each inhale and exhale, I could almost feel her giving in to the comfort of leaning there, trusting me to hold the space for her. I glanced down, unable to help myself, and saw her face softened in repose. Her lashes cast faint shadows over her skin. Her lips parted slightly as though she might speak, but chose not to. There was something breathtaking about the quiet vulnerability she carried in that moment. She wasn't the confident hostess or the composed woman of experience I had seen when the evening began. She was simply herself, real, unguarded, beautiful in a way that made my chest tighten. I told myself not to read into it, that she was just tired, that this closeness was nothing more than convenience. But the longer I sat there, the harder it became to believe that. If it was only comfort she sought, why hadn't she shifted away? Why did her arm remain pressed lightly against mine, her body angled as though she wanted to close every gap between us? I could feel the steady beat of her heart when her arm brushed against my side, a rhythm that synced strangely with my own. My hand twitched slightly against my leg, aching to move, to bridge the space between us with something more deliberate. But I held still, caught between longing and hesitation. The silence stretched, but it wasn't empty. It was full of things we weren't saying, of the questions hanging in the air, of the tension neither of us seemed ready to name. I thought about speaking, about breaking the quiet with some safe comment, but the words stuck in my throat. To speak would be to lessen it, to reduce this delicate, charged stillness into something ordinary. And this moment was anything but ordinary. Her lips curved faintly, the suggestion of a smile flickering across her face as though she sensed the weight of what hung between us. I wondered if she knew how much it meant, how much it shook me to sit there with her resting against me, as though I were more than just a guest on her couch. The silence spoke louder than any words could, louder than laughter, louder than confessions. It told me what I was afraid to say, and maybe, just maybe, it told her too. For a while I thought I could stay like that forever, her head resting against me, the quiet comfort of her presence making the world outside the living room feel irrelevant. But forever is a dangerous word. It doesn't fit in moments like these because sooner or later, reality slips in. It started small, a thought that whispered at the back of my mind when I tried to ignore. What would people say if they saw us like this? My best friend's aunt, leaning against me as if I were someone she belonged beside. The thought carried a weight that pressed down on me, heavier than the softness of her body resting at my side. I shifted slightly, careful not to disturb her, but she stirred anyway. Her lashes fluttered, and she blinked up at me with a softness that sent my stomach tumbling. "Sorry," she murmured, her voice low and warm. "I didn't mean to drift off on you like that." I swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "It's fine. I didn't mind." Her eyes lingered on me for a beat too long. There was a gentleness there, something I wanted to hold on to, but beneath it I caught something else, a hesitation. It mirrored the same unease that was clawing at me. She sat up a little straighter, creating a sliver of distance between us. Not much, but enough to cool the warmth that had been steadily building. She smoothed her hair, tucked a strand behind her ear, and exhaled as though grounding herself. The movement was casual, but it carried a meaning I couldn't ignore. The silence between us felt different now. Where it had been full of unspoken connection before, it was suddenly heavy with questions neither of us wanted to voice. I tried to fill it with something safe. "You've got a really comfortable couch," I said with a half laugh, instantly regretting how stupid it sounded. Her smile was polite, distant. "It's been around for years. I almost replaced it, but I guess I held on." She didn't look at me when she said it, and I wondered if she was still talking about the couch. My chest tightened. Doubt seeped in, cold and unwelcome. Was I imagining everything? Had the closeness, the warmth, the subtle brush of her arm against mine all been in my head? Or worse, had it been something real that neither of us had the right to lean into? I glanced at her, searching for an answer in the curve of her mouth, the way her eyes avoided mine. She seemed torn, like someone who had taken a step forward and realized too late that the ground beneath her might not hold. For the first time that night, I wished the silence would break. I wanted her to say something, anything that would tell me whether I was supposed to pull away or hold on. But she didn't, and neither did I. The doubt hung there, sharp and unyielding, a shadow over the fragile closeness we'd shared only moments ago. The silence stretched, long enough that I thought it might break us. After all, doubt had a way of stealing the warmth from moments that felt too good to be true. But then something shifted, not in the room, not in the world, but in her. She turned toward me, slowly, as if weighing the decision with every heartbeat. Her dark eyes softened, no longer avoiding mine. "You're quiet," she said, her voice low, the kind of tone people used when they were asking something without asking it outright. I hesitated, my throat tightening. "I don't want to cross a line." Her lips curved into the smallest, saddest smile. "I don't either." A pause. Then she added, almost to herself, "But sometimes lines feel smaller when you're sitting this close." Her honesty left me breathless. The doubt that had wrapped itself around my chest loosened, just a little. I nodded, and before I could overthink it, I let my hand rest gently on the cushion between us, not touching her, but close enough to invite her if she wanted. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, quietly, deliberately, she placed her hand over mine. Warm, steady, not trembling, though I could feel a faint quickness in her pulse when her fingers brushed across my skin. The contact was simple, but it carried the weight of everything we hadn't said. I exhaled, a sound that was half relief, half disbelief. So, we're not pretending anymore. She gave a soft laugh, the kind that held both courage and nervousness. No, I don't think I can. Her words lit something inside me, a warmth that spread further than any doubt ever could. I turned my palm to lace my fingers gently with hers, careful, tentative. Her hand fit against mine in a way that felt both surprising and inevitable. We sat like that, saying nothing, letting the silence become comfortable again. It was different now, no longer a void, but a space filled with quiet acceptance. I noticed the way she leaned back toward me, her shoulder brushing against mine, not by accident this time. The living room seemed softer, smaller, as though the world had folded itself around us. The hum of the television faded into background noise. The ticking of the clock became slower, steadier. Everything outside of that couch disappeared. "You know, this isn't simple," she said after a while, her voice carrying that blend of strength and vulnerability that was uniquely hers. "I know," I admitted. My thumb traced gently over her knuckles, a touch that was both reassuring and searching. But simple doesn't always mean right. Her eyes glistened in the glow of the lamp, and when she leaned her head against me once more, it was with intention, not an accident, not a lapse, but a choice. I let myself relax into her, holding her hand a little tighter, knowing that whatever tomorrow brought, this moment was real. This closeness, this unspoken bond, it belonged to us, even if no one else would ever understand. For the first time all night, there was no hesitation. Only the quiet, undeniable truth that we had chosen each other.